Day, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to the Neil Oliver Show on GB News TV, radio and online. Tonight I'll be speaking to Alan Miller from the Together Declaration as that organisation approaches its 3rd anniversary. Canadian journalist David Craden will be with us to discuss the ongoing restriction of rights in his country and in ours. And I'll be speaking with Dr. John Campbell about the rise of the use of seed oils and ultra-processed foods. All of that and more coming up. But first, one of those updates on the latest news.
Hello, I'm Will Hollis with your 6 o'clock update from the GB News newsroom. Some breaking news for you first of all. Parties on the right are leading in at least one of Germany's state elections. That's according to an early exit poll, and we'll bring you more of that as we hear it. Next, some dramatic footage of a gun battle between Israeli soldiers and a Palestinian gunman as the IDF continues raids in the West Bank. The footage viewers can see on TV and on radio you can hear was filmed in Hebron, where a major Israeli operation is entering its 5th day. The IDF says they killed a suspected Palestinian attacker who carried out an assault near the area in previous days. Sir Keir Starmer has joined world leaders condemning what he's described as the horrific and senseless killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. US President Joe Biden's also said he's devastated and outraged by the news, while the Israeli Prime Minister insists he won't rest until those responsible are caught. The leader of the Scottish National Party has been speaking before members on the final day of its conference in Edinburgh. The keynote speech by Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, who took over the party from Humza Yousaf in May, highlighted child poverty as a priority, plus a ceasefire in Gaza.
I was one of the first and remains a leading voice demanding an immediate ceasefire and the return safely of all hostages in Gaza. Let the message from this conference be heard loud and clear. The killing of innocent men, women and children must end, and it must end now.
Two teenagers have been arrested over the murder of a 13-year-old boy in Oldbury. West Midlands Police said the teens are being questioned in connection with the fatal stabbing in Lovett Avenue earlier this week. The family of the 13-year-old killed are aware of those developments. The Met Office has extended thunderstorm warnings across a large part of the UK. Much of England, Wales and Scotland are now covered by the alert for today and for tomorrow. Forecasters say there's a risk of flooding because of heavy showers and hail. And to finish for you, Great Britain's Ben Pritchard has won Paralympic rowing gold in the PR1 men's singles sculls. Pritchard's victory is Britain's first in the division since the 2008 Games in Beijing. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Will Hollis. More in 1 hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Just how beaten down are people in this country? Just how much more will people, not all people maybe, but too many people, perhaps most people, have inflicted upon them before saying enough? Is it a symptom of the madness of crowds? How much application of state power will people witness? Speak out against state policy and we'll put you in jail, while simultaneously setting free those who have committed actual real-world violence against peaceful citizens, seems to be the message now. Might it be that millions are in the grip of a condition akin to Stockholm Syndrome, when captives, victims of abusive relationships, develop sympathy or even downright affection for their captors and abusers? How else to explain why those who have systematically dismantled and cast aside the social contract between the people and the state, deliberately immiserated the middle class, heaped additional hardship on the poorest, demonised the indigenous population, strangled freedom of speech, continue to deploy propaganda and brainwashing to frighten and so coerce whole swathes of the population into a sustained state of fear and submission? How else to explain how those guilty of all of the above and more besides are still accepted as leaders and authority figures today? How many times will so many listen to Prime Minister Starmer and his party going back on their word, their promises before they were elected into office, over and over, before that natural majority says, simply and with feeling, no, no more of this? How many blatant breaches of trust in authority will people accept from freshly minted Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party before they demand his and their removal from office? Starmer warns that the autumn budget will be painful, but we all know who will feel that pain, more pain, and who won't. Over and over again, state hypocrisy runs unchecked. Do as I say and mind your own business. Starmer, like so many determined to call the shots, is insulated by wealth and status, by a pension protected by nothing less than an Act of Parliament. Why do the tax-paying citizens of this country, this admittedly divided and unhappy country, continue to tolerate the notion that while our infrastructure decays, while the cost of living soars, while the elderly are left in the cold, while the consequences of the last 4 years of deliberately ruinous policies in response to a pandemic that wasn't, policies that further enriched the rich and immiserated the rest, stripped freedom from the rest, while those consequences are shamelessly swept under the rug? Why do tax-paying, law-abiding citizens of this deliberately broken place, the home and hallowed soil of the ancestors, stand by while our billions of pounds, as yet unearned, are promised to Ukraine, a country thousands of miles away, promised to that country for 100 years if needs be, so that citizens there, those not already cold in the clay that is, might look forward to having their infrastructure rebuilt, their pensions paid, their bureaucrats' salaries paid, while Britain goes to hell in a handcart? Why is this accepted as though it was right or proper, far less wanted or approved by us? Under what hypnotic spell are millions of people sleepwalking into the cold and the dark, the inevitable consequences of yet more ruinous policies designed to enrich the rich, with subsidies for wind turbines that stand idle when the wind doesn't blow, that are routinely switched off when the wind does blow, making millions either way, for the smothering of entire landscapes and ecosystems with solar panels that do nothing in the hours of darkness, wind turbines and solar panels serving e-vehicles that are dependent for their creation upon the wholesale desecration of landscapes and ecosystems far away, the harvesting of critical earth metals dependent upon the labour of child slaves, all in the name of a so-called green agenda that seems to me to be only about greed. How much more of this deliberate destruction of the natural world, of traditions, communities, ways of life, will the millions tolerate from these ideologues determined only to impose one world government upon the billions? How much more? How much longer? That our noses are daily rubbed in just how free, just how untroubled by consequences our so-called leaders feel in saying one thing one day and then doing quite the opposite the next is bad enough. Unbearable too is how clear it has been made that seeing the wrong and calling it out troubles the wrongdoers not a jot. It's hard to avoid concluding it's intentional that we see it, learn the lesson that the powerful feel empowered now to do whatever they want in plain sight, secure in the knowledge it's their way or the highway. Are we arriving at the point where there is no truth and no lies, just what we're told today? Worst of all, though, is the looming imminent threat that one day soon it might be literally illegal to say this out loud. Free speech hangs by a thread, as inconvenient and as maligned as the truth itself. People are in jail now for words posted on social media, words deemed harmful at least in the eyes of those who have appointed themselves unquestioned arbiters of what is harmful and what is not. Given that thousands of criminals, violent criminals among them, are set free to make space for so-called armchair rioters, those convicted of posting what the authorities now describe as unlawful content on social media, a person might feel justified in questioning the direction in which we're being herded. Starmer's Labour were elected by a fraction of the electorate. In his own constituency, Starmer got just 18,884 votes, down from 36,641 in 2019, meaning his own personal vote was halved. The turnout in his constituency collapsed from 56,000 in 2019 to 36,000 this time. Corbyn got more personal votes than Starmer. Only a third of the popular vote was for Labour, the so-called Loveless landslide. All this can be summed up by saying 2/3 of the country didn't vote for him or his version of the Uniparty. It almost goes without saying that this latest red-shaded version of more of the same has inherited the damage inflicted upon society, the economy, the hearts and minds of the people from those just like them, indistinguishable from them really, who styled themselves blue, for all that matters. 4 years ago, people were silenced and vilified for telling the truth about the likely consequences of lockdown, the consequences of the all but mandated medical interventions. What was said then by the silenced, by the vilified, has been shown to have been the truth. But the telling of the truth, the knowing of that truth, matters not. Now we have Mark Zuckerberg telling the United States he and his company were coerced into suppressing those pandemic facts and truths, that they were coerced into suppressing the truth of the Hunter Biden laptop. The truth of all that has long been known, that 50-odd figures from the intelligence community put their names to the lie that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian propaganda. But now we have it from the horse's mouth. The truth about the family of a then would-be president, truth that, had it been widely known and not suppressed by those in league with Biden and his cohorts, might have led to an altogether different election result in 2020. This truth is out there now and is making no material difference, no consequences, no charges, no impeachment. We can talk openly now. I can say that, in my opinion, the war in Ukraine was not the response to an unprovoked attack by Putin's Russia, that it was the consequence of 20 years and more of NATO mission creep advancing 1,000 miles across Europe right up to Russia's doorstep, despite signed treaties promising it would do no such thing. Action that, therefore, you could argue provoked Putin into action not to start a war but to finish one. All of that was said and suppressed and silenced, but it was true then and it's true now. And yet those responsible, with the blood of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians on their hands, face no consequences whatever, while populations here, there and elsewhere continue to pay the price in pounds, euros, dollars and rubles, and also in yet more innocent blood. 4 years into this debacle, and the silencing and threatening and vilification are worse than ever. In Paris, the founder and CEO of the messaging app Telegram is detained in France, apparently awaiting charges, including, not to put too fine a point on it, refusal to let the intelligence community penetrate the encryption his customers depend upon for privacy. Other big tech platforms and the names associated with them are under attack as well, all over the world. Platforms hosting voices that told the truth all along. Turns out it's not misinformation and disinformation, the powerful fear, and would move heaven and earth to silence. It's what they call malinformation, which is more usefully described as the truth, the inconvenient truth. Here's the thing, if the millions are silent, and sadly they are, That's surely because it was the plan all along. Millions more are frightened, threatened, made aware of their own terrible vulnerability in the shadow of the powerful. For so many, it's reduced to just surviving, making ends meet. It was hard enough to speak up when the consequences were ridicule and vilification. It was hard enough when the consequences were the loss of family relationships, loss of friendships. Now the consequences of speaking up include loss of freedom itself, jail time for stating an opinion. It's harder than ever to keep heads up, but more important than ever. It's harder than ever to keep the faith, but more important than ever. We're told that he who remains silent is deemed to have granted his consent. I, for one, do not consent, not to any of this. Joining me this week for the duration of the show, friend and journalist Jasmine Birtles. Good to see you as always, Jasmine.
Thank you. Hello.
I had simply thought in my naivety that by now people would have said no, that there would just have been some kind of collective and unignorable statement that we'd had enough, but no.
No, it's a shame, isn't it? Because I feel the same. I think that protests are worth it for getting people together, and the powers that be do notice them. They pretend not to. Media blanks it all out. I know, because I was on all of the lockdown protests, you know, through that time, and it was blanked. Apart from, bless it, GB News, have to say, you know, I remember being on your programme and we showed some of the video. But it gets people together and it makes them realise that they're not the only ones. But we do need more. We're not good at revolutions in this country. It's not so, you know, we're not like the French who, you know, do it every couple of centuries.
But isn't it possible, though, that there's some kind of brinkmanship going on at the moment? That the authorities, the state, is preparing people for the denouement that, yeah, you can protest if you want, you can know the truth if you want, you can speak facts if you want, but it won't make any difference. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, that's certainly the way they'd like us to think, definitely, but I don't feel that that's the reality. I think that they, and I have to sort of put it in inverted commas because I'm never terribly sure who I'm talking about, but, you know, deep state, the state and the deep state, those who seem to be in power, I do think they're actually more afraid than they're giving out, really. I think they realise that they are losing the battle. I think they realise that more and more people are waking up about different aspects of life that we've been lied to about. It's not just COVID, it's the sort of climate, it's gender politics, it's all kinds of, you know, financial stuff, economic, and we are waking up. They do know that. So I think that the issue now is that we who are awake, we don't realise our power, and we don't realise actually that we are the majority. We really are the majority. And I agree with you that ideally we need to get together to do that. One of the things that stops us, I think there are a few things that stop us. One is just inertia, but another is the fact that people are struggling. They're struggling, you know, they're spending all their time trying to earn money, trying to keep things going, trying to keep the family going, just trying to keep their heads above water.
Bear with me, Jasmine. I'm going to be joined now by GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, as a student of the political process and political parties, what do you make of the manifestation of government at this moment?
Well, I think the first point to mention there, Neil, is that less than 2 months ago we had a general election. So this was democracy in action. Now, I appreciate that only one third of the vote created 2/3 of the MPs, but that's the first past the post system that we've got. So the idea that people aren't having a say, they get a say at a general election. That's what democracy is all about. And if they don't like the result of that, they have to wait for the next general election to vote in a new lot.
Now, I would just simply contend that what the people were offered was a choice between, you know, one fatal disease and another. What kind of a choice was it?
Well, I mean, anybody is free to start a political party. That we actually had a new political party this general election, which was Reform. And Reform did remarkably well. That 5 MPs coming second in 98 seats, it shows that people had a chance to vote for an alternative. If you don't like Reform, you've got the Greens. If you don't like the Greens, you've got the Liberal Democrats. So it's not as if that people don't have a choice. That is what a democracy is all about. There are a plethora of parties in this country, and people are then free to vote for which one they think will best serve their interests.
Do you look on at a Labour government that has inherited from a Conservative government a commitment to send billions of pounds abroad to service Ukraine? Do any of these people put Britain first? Will any of these people ever care about Britain and the British?
Well, I think the answer to that is yes. If you're talking specifically about Ukraine, that you have the right to freedom of speech to say that you don't think we should be supporting Ukraine. Most opinion polls show that the majority of the British public do think we're doing the right thing. The whole point about the war in Ukraine is about our defence too. We're supporting Ukraine to stop Russia going further, which is why we expanded NATO's borders right up to the Russian border. Now, that may have split President Putin. I do understand that. But the whole point is that we are fighting, if you like, a proxy war. We've decided as a political institution, both the Tories and Labour, that is the right thing to do. The majority of the British people back that. If people disagree with that, what they should do is form a political party and stand for election and say so.
Sorry, Nigel, time's against us. I'm going to have to move on. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for providing that alternative point of view. It's a break. After that, Alan Miller from the Together Declaration about the organisation's 3rd anniversary. Imagine that. You're watching the Neil Oliver Show on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales could be back to full duties by the autumn. This would be wonderful news.
Well, I actually don't think she is going to be back to full-time duties by the autumn. I think that's how I read it. But in fact, I think what they were saying, this is a report by the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, is that Catherine is still recovering and she's still having treatment, but she doubts whether she'll be back to full-time duties, but we will be seeing her. So we will be, seeing her at big royal events, and she'll, if she's up to it, she will, appear now and then, but most of her work will be done from home because she's still having the cancer treatment. And as she said way back in the summer, she has good days and she has bad days.
Yeah, and we can all understand that, can't we? But it does make such a difference, doesn't it, to catch glimpses of her. And seeing her and William this week congratulating the GB athletes after the success at the Olympics, it really does make all the difference just to see her, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I think, she wants to get out there, but I don't think she's going to be back at the daily chore of royal duties, visiting hospitals, things like that. I don't think she'd be strong enough to do that. But, she looks terrific. We know she's had a brutal year, in fact, probably much, much worse than any of us can imagine. And so she's, doing what her doctors are telling her. She's taking it very gently. I'm sure she wants to go full steam ahead, but she is being restrained, as it were.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration, which is an organisation dedicated to uniting people to push back against infringements on rights and freedom. Alan, it's always good to see you. I honestly can't believe that it's been 3 years. That's a significant chunk of time.
It is. It's, in a way, the time bends, that it's been a really long time, but it's felt like at moments it's just flashed past. But so much has changed, the world before lockdowns and post-lockdowns, and now we're seeing right now, aren't we, Neil, in the contemporary landscape, how just kind of cavalier attitudes towards freedom of speech, rights to protest, even where people can smoke now or not outside places.
You'd have thought that so much is exposed now in terms of the way it's so blatant, the way our rights and freedoms are being infringed, and yet that's not triggering the necessary movement.
Well, I think what happens is things get couched in words that sound like they're very concerning. So it's for your health. You know, everyone knows smoking's bad for you, so that we're just doing this. Or it's for your safety, or it's to prevent, you know, rioting. And, you know, what reasonable person could disagree with that? But in actual fact, what we've got is the worst case scenario that we always argue against, that what could happen if you allow these measures to be in place, are already happening, right? And I think that the thing about Together, and the reason for the name, and it's really important, is that we want to get the public involved. We think it's essential. If we can't argue these things out in open as adults and articulate them, it doesn't matter if you agree with me or not, if you think... the problem is we're all going to be silenced, and we're all going to be limited and suffocated, and that is the mortal concern for freedom.
Jasmine, we're told, we're sort of preached at, really, that... we should not be afraid of our government should be afraid of the people. Mm-hmm. But it very much feels as though increasingly people are being somehow tricked, at least, into fear, into being afraid of the state.
Yes, absolutely. And this is what we were saying earlier, that actually we are the majority. We, those who are thinking, those who are wondering and complaining and asking, we are the majority. And they should be afraid. And all we need to do is to withdraw our consent, to say no and keep saying no. And as with Together, get together and doing it, because together we are stronger. And I do feel that Together is a good hub for people to get together and create a stronger front to take on government.
I would say that Britain feels broken. But and people are definitely at each other's throats, group against group, black against white against brown, Christian against Muslim against Jew, and all of the rest of it. But I don't believe that has happened organically. I think it has been fomented. I think people are being set against people because that febrile atmosphere, it works in the favour of those who would impose more restrictions and tighten the leash.
Well, I think it's a big problem what we've got with identity politics and identitarianism. I do think the danger is that there's a reaction and then another reaction where people become tribalist. But I think we need to set some things out. I think in a sovereign nation state, we've got to be able to have free speech. You've got to be able to have a criticism of whether you're pro-migration or against it, for what reasons. You've got to talk about resources. You've got to talk about integration versus multiculturalism. It's not about colour. But Are there questions around radical ideas, right? Radical Islam, not 4 million Muslims. And can we have this discussion without people getting bent out of shape and trying to ban it? They're the essential things.
Together is the key. I'm running out of time coming up against a break, but thank you so much. I think together is the right word, together is the right attitude.
Thanks, Neil. Brilliant stuff.
You're a good man. GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson is still with me. Nigel, you were kind of underlining faith in the democratic process, that people have the choice, have the vote. But isn't it interesting that an organisation, a movement like the Together Declaration has formed? Because that would seem to suggest that many people feel that they need to do something else, something other. That it's not about the vote. It's not about maintaining faith in traditional means of maintaining rights and freedom. That something else has to be done.
Well, I mean, some people might think that. I think saying many people is a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, there's much that Alan just said that I agree with, that certainly we should be scrutinising our government, criticising our government, showing our opposition to it in lawful ways. But insurrection is not the answer. All that would cause is chaos, anarchy, and violence. So what we live in a democracy. We should use that democratic process and our right to freedom of speech to try and change things. We don't need to go and take to the streets to go and do it.
But I would suggest that democracy is now an empty word. It's now, we all know what it's supposed to mean, but in action and as it manifests now, it's just an empty vessel. That people are aware of that, and they're also aware that there is no choice. That it's a choice between one bad flavour and another, and that given that why would people be mollified and satisfied by that completely suboptimal state of affairs? Surely it's inevitable, and in a sense, the state as it stands is provoking people. It's actually pushing people away from the democratic process by having done everything they can to make it utterly meaningless.
What you're suggesting then, Neil, is if there is some kind of conspiracy afoot to set people against other people. And what I would ask is, why would government be doing that? What would be the purpose behind it? It would just cause them more difficulties. What they want to do is get on with their job of running the country. Whatever you think about the way they do it, that's what they're there for. By and large, MPs, and I've been rubbing shoulders with them now for nearly 4 decades, MPs are mostly good people trying to do good things.
Onwards, another break, after which Canadian journalist David Craden will join me to discuss the ongoing restriction of rights in his country.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around. A lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday, ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Neil Oliver Show. I'm joined now by my friend, Canadian journalist and host of Craden's Right, David Craden. Good to see you, David.
It's so nice to be back, Neil.
David, I feel sometime in the not-too-distant future, you in Canada and me in Britain, we'll soon only be able to communicate with one another by banging out Morse code on the pipes of our prison cells with our tin cups. What say you?
I've never seen freedom die so quickly as it has in the UK in the last month of this horrid administration. But Canada, of course, is going in the same way. We have the Online News Act coming to us again in the fall for a second reading. But believe it or not, Neil, the RCMP in this country, yes, the blessed Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are doing it already. They're not waiting for this law to be passed to go around arresting people for supposedly putting horrible things on the internet, on social media. There was a woman in Chilliwack recently arrested for supposedly putting out racially offensive material on social internet. And where have we seen this? This is exactly what happened in Britain, where that visual, that scene of the two cops, one of them talking like Eliza Doolittle, coming in there and telling that old man that he's guilty of a Facebook crime. And in fact, he says, "Oh, let me guess, it's a Facebook crime, isn't it?" And she says, "That's right, get your meds, we're going to jail." And that's exactly what's transpiring here in Canada. Now, we had a woman in Wasaga Beach, which is in southern Ontario and just north of Toronto. The cops came to her living room and warned her about things she was putting on social media. So they're not even waiting for the Online Harms Act to pass, which, as you know, and I think your listeners will know, this is Justin Trudeau's third piece of internet legislation, internet censorship, which is going to make it illegal to have a thought crime. There's actually a thought crimes component in this bill, and it's going to make it extremely difficult for anybody out there, as an independent journalist, as new media, and even for old media, to say anything controversial, anything that's going to upset the government. And right now, that's Justin Trudeau, and just about everything upsets Justin Trudeau, unless you're in lockstep with his socialist policies.
I have it on good authority that that Trudeau is contemplating pushing for the ability to jail for life on account of things that people say. That some of it is actually going to carry a life term. Can that be true?
Yes, that's exactly. The Online Harms Bill has a provision for 20 years in prison. That's more than murderers are getting in this country. 20 years, that's life in Canada, yes. And that's part of the Online Harms Bill. And this is a piece of legislation that has been sold to the public as a means of protecting children from child pornography. Children are already protected from child pornography through the criminal code, through legislation. And it's got nothing to do with revenge porn and all these other red herrings that the Trudeau government is putting up there and out there as a means of making people accept this bill. This bill is, strictly speaking, everything George Orwell spoke about in 1984. Yes, Justin Trudeau is using 1984 as a guidebook. Our opposition Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, have made that declaration and that observation about a month or two ago, saying Trudeau doesn't look at 1984 as a warning. He looks upon it as a guidebook, as a means to advancing his censorship agenda, which is amongst the most frightening in the world. At least as frightening as what's happening in your country right now under Starmer, who is bringing Britain down to a totalitarian second world nation. It's shocking to me. I have loved Great Britain my entire life. I have looked to the UK as the fount of free speech, as the country that developed free speech over centuries because of the Magna Carta and forward. This is the country, I asked recently, how do democracies die? Well, they can die pretty quickly. When you have a prime minister who goes on about these so-called keyboard warriors who should be locked up for 3 years for daring to put anything on social media that upsets this pudgy-faced dictator.
David Craden in Canada, I hear you loud and clear, brother. I'm so glad that you were able to join me, because the emotion with which you speak over and above the words you used to articulate your thoughts, there's the message. David Craden, you and I will speak together again very soon, but thanks for joining me so far. Jasmine, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That emotion. That's what it. I mean, I was finding it laughable what David was describing, but it's not a happy laughter. It's it's the kind of gallus laughter of the condemned man.
Absolutely, it's so insane. And as he was talking, I was thinking again that Trudeau's Canada, which Canada used to be the place of freedom generally. Certainly in my view, that Trudeau's Canada is the one that first closed people's accounts just for the temerity of protesting, and then closed the accounts of people who supported the people who were protesting. This is a truly shocking individual.
And people like myself, people like yourself, we've been shouted down as conspiracy theorists, but how long were we pointing out that the same things were being done in lockstep, one after the other, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, here in Britain, and we were called conspiracy theorists for suggesting that all of it had a larger choreography.
Absolutely.
That it was just some kind of organic coincidence that all these places were doing the same thing, using the same words at the same time.
Yeah, same phrases. 2 steps to flatten the curve. One more push.
Build back
Ukraine,
better. Narrow window of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And yet to suggest that some of it might have actually been coordinated from on high, you got conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Coming up, how concerned should we be about the rise of seed oils and ultra-processed foods? I know how concerned I am. I'll be speaking to Dr. John Campbell, the inestimable Dr. John Campbell, and Suna van Kampen about all of that. Stay with us.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben, do you like baking?
Baking? Only flapjack.
Why flapjack?
It's just a childhood favourite. Otherwise, no, I don't have time to do anything, no.
Yeah.
No, do you?
I love baking.
Really?
Yeah, I find it really relaxing.
You never bring in any treats for me.
I know, I was thinking
Scones
that's
or
next,
cakes?
isn't it? Scones.
Oh, it's my birthday next week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what to do?
I've
You're not
really
here,
dug
are
a
you?
hole for myself now, haven't I? No, I actually am here next week.
OK, well, you know what to do then.
OK, I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by JP from Bridget's Bakery.
BB is the brand, is the face, is the smile. She originated the motto, making London smile, so that's what we try to do on board of our lovely buses and in our shops.
Which is probably the most British thing you could imagine.
Yes, we try to do a 3-in-1. We try to really embrace all of the culture and history, so Roadmaster buses, 1970s. Oh, nice pictures. We have the full afternoon tea, 1700.
JP, is it scone or scone? And also, where does the word come from?
Ben.
Is it of French origin?
Ben, how very dare you asking me? Are you trying to actually put me under the spotlight? I would say, according to a Belgian person, it's scone.
Scone.
Exactly.
Oh, that's what
so I like to do a mix of both. But I would say...
Sorry, JP.
Common as muck. and another key question which many Brits get tangled up in is it the jam first or the cream first?
So, I'll tell you a very scientific fact I just made up on my way here this morning. The best way to eat your scone or scone is, first step, you split it in 2 halves.
Yeah.
On one half, you do the cream and jam. The other half, the jam and cream.
Oh, no.
Then, if you feel like people looking at you, you should squash it together. And if really the tension is quite high, you should give your scone to the nearest person holding a chef jacket. There you go.
That sounds too diplomatic.
Yeah.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Neil Oliver Show. Joined now by retired nurse teacher John Campbell to discuss concerns raised by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the United States of America about seed oils and ultra-processed foods and the health consequences thereof. Dr. John, pleasure to see you there.
Thank you, Neil. Always good to be back.
I'm sure many people listening to this will already have seen the video that you posted in the last day or two, and I smiled wryly when you said, or you wished that Bobby Kennedy Jr. would come and fix Britain as well. But can you just go into a little bit more detail about how you feel about the stats that are now coming out from Casey and Callie Means and other commentators about the state of children's health, particularly in the United States?
It really is quite incredible, and I'm sure a lot of people saw that great speech and interview from Robert Kennedy Jr. when he joined on with Mr. Trump on that presidential ticket, and he used that great phrase, "Make America healthy again." And this is true. There was a point in the past, if we go back in the United Kingdom, if we go back into the United States, where the diet was healthy. But then food became more and more big business, more and more industrialized. And we moved away from natural food or unprocessed food onto processed foods, which might have had an ingredient or two added and maybe tinned, to ultra-processed foods, which are essentially industrial products. They're made in huge volumes in factories. And the food is formulated to come up with something that looks nice and tastes nice and people are going to go back to and might even be a little bit addictive. But the question is, how much are they prioritizing the health of this food rather than the benefit, the business benefit and the profits made from this food? There's no question these ultra-processed foods are responsible for a lot of the chronic disease epidemic, pandemic, that we're all suffering from. The list is long but fairly well known: diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, strokes, heart attacks, joint problems.
I've heard it said, I think it might have been Casey Means actually in one of her recent broadcasts, saying that there is no more valuable commodity in the United States than a sick child because of the lifelong potential for costly treatment. Now that's some indictment, is it not, of the state of health of a preeminent first world country?
It really is hard, Neil, not to become cynical about these things, isn't it? I can understand that degree of cynicism. But if you have, I mean, in America at the moment, 1 to 4-year-olds, these very young children, about 15% of those are quite significantly overweight. And of course, when you get through into adulthood, the percentages are way, way higher. Probably about 40% of American adults are actually obese. And again, we're not that far behind in the United Kingdom, at probably about 26%. Something like 11% of American adults have diabetes. Again, we're not too far behind, with probably about 6.5% diabetic in the UK at the moment, but about 500,000 being added to that every year. And this is actually costing diabetes alone, if that's all we take as diabetes, is costing the NHS about £10 billion per year. That could be spent on other things, probably about 10% of the NHS budget.
And that obviously
of course,
means
the
that
NHS spends quite a lot of money on pharmaceuticals.
The other side of that is that somebody's making 10 billion from all those diabetic children.
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, that's diabetics altogether in the UK, but younger people are developing type 2 diabetes at a younger age. It does tend to become more prevalent with increasing age. But of course, then these people need quite significant management for the rest of their lives. And it's not just the diabetes itself. It causes peripheral vascular disease and amputations, the heart disease, the strokes, the disability. People can't make a living and people can't pay their taxes. You would think politicians would at least be more motivated by vested self-interest to increase tax revenue to fill this black hole that apparently has been discovered in our national income. But it's the serious point is that sick people do make a lot of money for political interest, and the fundamental now, I do feel needs to be asked, and Robert Kennedy is bold enough to be asking some of these questions, and I really wish him well for the United States. And if some of that rubs off us on the UK as well, where we're not far behind in terms of this epidemic of chronic diseases, that would be a really good thing.
Surely it cannot be and must not be a controversial thing to demand healthy children and a healthy population. Dr. John Campbell, as always, you've given me lots to worry about, as you so often do.
Sorry, Neil. Yeah,
but it's a necessary tonic. Thank you very much, Dr. John Campbell. We'll speak again soon. I'm joined now by the CEO and founder of Tonic Health, Suna van Kampen. Thank you for joining me. I think, to continue this line of thought, would you subscribe to the view that we have a chronic toxic food pandemic in this country and in the United States?
I think we're getting there, and we're definitely on that roadmap. I actually agree with a lot of what was said. With what I do is focus on how can we work with the industry and how can we work with people on the psychology to make the fundamental changes to diet and health from within the food business and industry, essentially.
Yeah. Jasmine Birtles, Bobby Kennedy, in his recent pronouncements, is actually talking about corruption. He's blankly, frankly saying that it's on account of a conspiracy between big agriculture and the food production, being subsidised by government. That the whole thing is tied together in a hellish cocktail. Does that make sense for you?
It does. I mean, I keep seeing the connection between big pharma and big food. Quite a lot of the pharma companies own these big food companies. It's processed. Also, even tobacco industries. I mean, it's a nightmare scenario.
Suna, it feels sometimes as though our governments are working against us. That far from having our health and our physical and well-being is central to their policies, central to their thinking, that on the contrary, they're just conspiring with big agriculture and large corporates to push products in our direction that are doing us nothing but harm.
I wouldn't go as far as saying they're conspiring to do these things. I think from what I've seen from within the industry is they're often misled and confused, and the waters are essentially muddied by big food in a way that makes it very confusing for government to make policy changes that really impact, food and drink. If you look at FSS, the legislation they have tried to implement it's a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't technically classify things, because nuts are considered a high-fat food that aren't good for you under that guidance, when in fact they're a natural food that's very healthy. So I think it comes down to also the definitions of an ultra-processed food. Technically, I make vitamin products. Technically, by some ultra-processed food definition, they would be classed as an ultra-processed food, when in fact they're incredibly nourishing. We take as many additives out as possible and give nutrients to people that need them most. So it comes down to, I think, confusion rather than anything malicious. And what I'm trying to do with our content and our business is trying to provide clarity of what health really means to people and the industry to make a difference from within.
Surely, though, time to confront some basic truths that we've drifted a long way, clearly in the United States of America, but here at home we have drifted a long way from what it is to grow, to care for, to cook and consume healthy, natural food.
100%. I mean, education, I remember when I was in school, you know, there was food tech and you would go learn to cook in school and there would be classes that taught you these things. These things don't exist in our food system anymore. So you see kids leaving for university and they have no idea how to do anything than put something in a microwave, right? And that then leads to this epidemic of, in the UK now, 57% of an ultra-processed food diet. And it starts with education. And I think in some ways, the government has roles to play in that education, but also we as society have to step up and understand that food is fundamental to life and it's the fuel that gets us through the day and makes our body function, and we need to learn how to do that.
As a wise man once said, the 9 most terrifying words on the planet are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." But I take your point. Maybe someone somewhere in that organisation has a role to play. Suna van Kampen, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Neil Oliver Show on GB News and online. Thank you to all my guests. Thank you to Jasmine Birtles. Thank you for your company. We'll be back next week, God willing.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms, staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of Northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around. A lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting